Hello, my name's Tony Whiten and I'm a musicologist and Professor of Jazz Studies at Birmingham City University. Since 2017, I've been working as a Knowledge Exchange and Impact Fellow for the Humanities and the European Research Area, or HERA as it's more commonly known. We're here today to celebrate the launch of a new HERA-funded animation created by Annalyn Chow that engages with the question of why the humanities matter and provides us with an immediate impression of how the humanities can make sense of the world. The animation deals with themes of culture and memory, of joy and pain, from the wonders of discovery to the ways of dealing with trauma and pain, past and present. I'm delighted to be joined by a group of experts who will help to contextualize this creative work and talk more broadly about the themes and issues raised within the animation itself. Our panel today features Annalyn Chow. Annalyn is an award-winning film and animation director based in London and Taiwan. Annalyn works with experimental materials, extending the boundaries between art, animation, and moving images. And she specializes in design-driven projects that combine physical materials with digital animation, transforming abstract concepts into collage. Her works include video art, performance and installation, and she also works as a freelance director with clients ranging from Channel 4 to the National Palace Museum in Taiwan. Daniel Carey is director of the Moore Institute for the Humanities and Social Studies at the National University of Ireland, Galway. He's vice president of the Royal Irish Academy and he serves on the board of the Irish Research Council and HERA. He's published on the crisis of COVID-19 from a humanities perspective in various venues, including the Sunday Independent, Ireland, RTE Brainstorm, and the site of the Irish Humanities Alliance. Joanna Sofair is Professor of Archaeology at the University of Southampton and a Knowledge Exchange and Impact Fellow for HERA. Jo also works as Director of Archaeology for the Creative Industries, and she's a PI for the Places of Joy Heritage After Lockdown project, and also the Marie Curie Award Women at the Edge of Empire. Jo was previously a partner in the Culture Europe project Journey to the Beginnings, and also led the HERA-funded project Creativity and Craft Production in Middle and Late Bronze Age Europe. Jo's worked closely with Annalyn on the development of this animation. And finally, Wojciech Sowa is the specialist in historical and Indo-European linguistics and classical philology. He's been active at universities in Krakow, Bratislava, Munster, and Erlangen, and is now Professor of Historical Linguistics at Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznan. Since 2011, Wojciech has been active in the field of science policy and humanities funding in Poland and Europe, and from 2016, he's provided leadership in the humanities through his role as chair of HERA. So welcome to our panel. So let's begin with Wojciech. For viewers who may not be familiar with HERA, perhaps Wojciech, you could start with a bit of background. What is HERA and what is its role?
Thank you very much, Tony, for this kind invitation. The HERA, so actually Humanities in the European Research Area, is a network consisting of 26 national research funding organizations from 25 participating European countries and the European Commission. HERA is actually a partnership dedicated to creating new opportunities for innovative transnational research in the humanities. By supporting a range of activities, including, of course, research programs, but also conferences, workshops, and advocacy, HERA promotes the value of the humanities for society and for policymaking. From its establishment in 2004, HERA has been committed to the vision of European researchers working across countries and across disciplines to address societal, cultural, historical, and philosophical issues in ways which were normally not possible within conventional national funding or at the level of the individual researcher. We believe that by addressing the most fundamental questions of human history, culture, and identity, and by promoting the values of curiosity, critical thinking, and intellectual tolerance, academic freedom, humanities-led research provides crucial insights relevant to all areas of human endeavor. Previous projects founded under HERA joint research programs from 2009 to 2019 have not only produced innovative research, but have also built new networks for future projects, have trained a number of new researchers, and have promoted knowledge exchange between the humanities and the wider domains of the arts industry, cultural institutions, education and media. As the network, of course, we want to become the voice for European humanities, but not only to become the reference in international humanities, both in funding as in research collaboration, but also we'd like to achieve the integration of humanities viewpoints into national and European research agendas and to inform policy making about the vital contributions humanities bring to societal issues. I think the currently running program, Public Spaces, Culture and Integration in Europe, which was intended to mobilize the wide range of multidisciplinary perspectives necessary to understanding of relationships between public space, culture and other phenomena, such as, for example, European integration, is actually the best example of our vision, and the reference to this vision, I think you will be able to track in the following animation as well. So thank you, Tony. Back to you.
Thank you, Wojciech. Perhaps it would be a good time to introduce Joe to the audience. Joe has been working as a knowledge exchange and impact fellow, and the animation was particularly Joe's brainchild. So, Joe, perhaps you could give us an idea about the kind of work you've been doing and the background to this particular animation, please.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. So we really wanted to find a way of advocating for the humanities that would reach really broad public. You know, the traditional advocacy methods that we've used are kind of talking heads, documentary style communication, and that reaches a really important constituency, but it doesn't go beyond that group. And we wanted to find ways of advocating for the humanities that were much more kind of accessible for people who wouldn't normally, I suppose, interact with the academic world, and that would reach children as well as adults, and would reach a whole range of publics right across Europe with different linguistic and cultural traditions. That's a big challenge. But actually, animation provides a way forward, because animation doesn't rely on one particular language. It's a way of storytelling that's accessible to everybody through visual reference. And so that's why we got together with Anne Lynn to kind of create this form of public engagement. And we hope that as a film, it starts a conversation about what the humanities are and how they can create a new kind of understanding of the world. So we got together, as I said. Anne Lynn already had experience in working with other cultural institutions, for example, the National Museum in Taiwan. And we started developing a storyline together. And that wasn't without its challenges, because how do you convey the importance and significance of the humanities within an animation? How do you do that in a story-based manner? So there was a lot of conversations between us around the development of the storyline, and a particular kind of challenge for us was, how do we understand the role of the humanities and humanities research versus what is humanity and the nature of human existence? I think, Anne Lynn, do you want to come in there to sort of talk about how we developed this storyline? Because it was really a kind of backwards and forwards exchange between us, between the filmmaker and the academic, which led to the kind of ideas that circulate within the film.
Yeah. Hi, guys. This is Anne Lynn. So I'm an animation director. So I still remember when Jo first reached me, she mentioned how many projects and concepts we wish to include into this animation. I think it's not an easy task. Yeah. Something really I haven't done it like before at all, but it's also very interesting because there's so many projects you need to dig into it, and then you know the background and all the projects. There are they're all from different cultures and different history. We're going to show a film about how important it is humanities are. And it is a very abstract concept. It's quite difficult to transform it into a storyline. But then we had an idea of a growing up of the girl who experienced different aspects of humanities. So she literally opens a book and enter this world with history, archaeology, music, art, languages, all sort of aspect of humanities. And I think it's a great way. So when the audience are watching this animation, they kind of feel like, oh, they are the girl, they are the character. And then they experience a whole journey of humanities and then realize, okay, humanities make us human. So that's the most important thing we have, the value as being a human being. The second challenge we face is, Joe mentioned that because it's an animation that includes so many different cultures, we couldn't use a specific language, right? Any like English, we can't even use English as a dialogue in the animation. I think it's a really huge challenge. So we try to symbolize the character. The main character, she looks so simple. Like in the beginning, she looks even like a robot, and she just have a very simple shape. Then we can have her fit into every space and time. So I think that's a really good design of the animation. Likewise, visually, we try to keep her simple, so every culture and background she can fit into. I think that's the biggest challenge we face. There was certainly so many back and forth. All the inspirations, they were basically from the HERA project. And then I think that's the most important thing, that we're showing so many different aspects in such a short film, in 3 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing was, when we were developing the story, we had this kind of problem about how do we encapsulate humanities research. If we tell a story, how does the research come into that story? And eventually the solution we came up with was that we have a character, as Anne-Lynn said, who becomes human through her experience of the different worlds of the humanities that exist in our different projects. But all the visual references within the film are to HERA projects. So everything you see in the film is a direct reference to a HERA research endeavor. So maybe it's at this point, do you think we should show the film? Maybe the viewers would like to see it.
Yeah, I can show it. Tony, is it a good time now?
Perfect, yeah. We could play the animation, and then perhaps Anne-Lynn and Joe, you could talk us through a few of the clips from the film. That would be great. Wow, thank you. That was absolutely fantastic. I've seen this numerous times now, and it never ceases to, I'm always moved, and it's fantastic. Joe, Annelien, perhaps you could talk us through some of the particular scenes, and you mentioned the fact that a lot of the imagery was based on specific HERA projects. So perhaps you can give us a clearer example of how that works in practice.
Yes, so as I said in the beginning, we had this real challenge about how do we tell a story yet encapsulate humanities research at the same time and show how that research is important. And in this dialogue, I think it was really important to have Annelien's creative vision, because that's really what made the ideas come alive. And her idea was to use the visual reference that we see in the projects, the things that the projects are actually studying, as an integral part of the whole film. So the character is moving through worlds which are composed physically of HERA research foci. So, for example, when the character opens the book, before the character is even in any way human, they open the book and out springs a range of images which actually come directly from the project Printing the Past, Architecture, Print Culture and Uses of the Past in Modern Europe. And you can see here in this slide exactly how those images all work together. You can see the original prints, which were studied by the project, and then how Annelien transferred them into the animation. And then further into the next scene, in the next world that the character enters as they move through this book, they enter a kind of museum world where they start to become human by touching and physically interacting with the objects. So the bird that you see in this scene is actually an object that came from my project when I was running a HERA project. And it's a Bronze Age object that looks like a bird, but isn't quite a bird because it has feet and it doesn't have wings, but it's nonetheless a bird. And the character touches this and the hands grow. And so in the next slide, you'll see that the character walks through a kind of history world, and having developed the sense of touch, they then develop the sense of smell. And so the character is moving through these different humanities worlds, which are constructed by the HERA projects, and develops their senses. And then as they move through the film, and then they enter the world of war, which is actually inspired by the HERA project, Making War, Mapping Europe, Militarized Cultural Encounters, 1792 to 1920, they start to have emotion. So all of these human elements, sensory elements and emotional elements, are learned and experienced through these humanities worlds and the humanities histories. And Lynn, how did you come up with that idea? I mean, I think it's really, really fantastic, this notion of the person growing and developing senses through the humanities. To me, it really captures what the humanities are all about.
I think, well, maybe it's based on a little bit based on my personal experience. So basically, I'm not an expert of humanities. You guys are. And I was so thrilled when you offered me this opportunity. So I read a lot of projects from you guys, and I kind of feel like I was a person that knowing nothing about this, and then gradually I grew from knowing nothing about, and then I know quite a lot of things through the readings and watching your films and the projects in HERA. I think that makes me into the main characters, basically me, myself, or a lot of people in the world. Like, they're all experiencing this kind of stuff. So we are always learning. And then after we have learned something, you kind of feel like, oh, I can see something I have never seen before. I can hear something that I feel something once I know the history, or once I know how much effort people have made because of this object or this art, this music. So basically, I think it is very true. You grow from reading, touching, all the five senses that makes us human through this kind of senses. And because animation, we can only deliver the audiences the visually and the audios, right? So I try to transform them into the animation performances. So when you see the character, she is gradually transforming with shapes and lines and colors. Oh, color is a very important elements we have in this animation. Now we can perform the changes. So yeah, I think this based on my personal experience, Joe.
Great. I think that's really interesting. And I hope that when people see this film, they put themselves in the position of the character to also have that journey. One of the things that we wanted to do was create something that had some emotional engagement for the audience. So it wasn't
absolutely. Yeah,
it wasn't a dry public lecture, which has that traditional academic feel, but it's something that reaches out beyond that touches people. And I think that was really important in the original idea and also in the execution of the idea. But there's something else that happened during the film, which I think is worth talking about. And I think we have to mention it, which is that the COVID-19 pandemic hit as we were making the film.
Oh, yeah.
And so it became really important for us to integrate contemporary events into the film to show that humanities actually had a role in the modern world, but also to take us into a sense of optimism at the end as the character steps into the world of art and music, having gone through this kind of COVID tunnel. But we put that there specifically because we wanted to show how important the role of the humanities could be in giving hope and in giving experiences to people during this particular time.
Well, perhaps this is a good point to bring Dan Carey into the frame. I mean, Dan, perhaps the humanities haven't always been, high on the agenda in terms of, discussions about the relevance to COVID and how it can help us in the current situation. And I know you've been a powerful advocate for this. So perhaps you could talk a bit about that now, please. If you could unmute, Dan.
You're right, Tony. The humanities are often overlooked in this context, but I think it is a mistake. We obviously need to understand the pandemic, how it has played out, and we need to learn from it. So, I mean, what are the cultural effects of it? What are the conditions in which the pandemic has occurred? These are questions that deeply involve the humanities. So I thought I would just kind of sketch through a few areas in which I think that's true. The first is if you consider what I would call the order of values. One of the things which has been true during the pandemic is that we've been encouraged to consider a series of trade-offs, old versus young, for example, the economy versus health, essential versus non-essential workers. I could go on. These are fundamentally philosophical issues. They are issues about the order of values as a society that we adhere to, and our ability to think through them is really the kinds of thing that the humanities provides for us. If we think about the notions of care, for example, that are absolutely central to the pandemic, how are we going to understand that more fully unless we really engage and grapple with it beyond the scientific dimension? If we think about the experience of the pandemic, there's so many different aspects to it, but think about virtualization, for example, that comes up in the animation. Our worlds have been overtaken, as we are indeed today, through mediation via various different media forms. And that is a profound aspect of this, and we'll be living with the consequences in lots of interesting and different ways. The experience is also one of social inequality, of differential effects. The phrase was initially, we're all in it together. What we've discovered is that we're not all in it together. It works its way out in various different kinds of ways. Questions of racism are very much at the forefront, and we have to think about them in terms of mortality rates, again, in terms of the order of social values. Then there's the question of political conditions, if I can put it that way. Trust. How do politicians encourage trust in their point of view? How is expertise being mobilized in this period? Why do we trust scientific evidence? How is it expressed to us, and why do we believe it? There are profound differences of political culture in this moment. Everyone will observe the differences between, the United States, Britain, parts of Europe, East Asia, for example. Very, very significant differences there that we have to think about. Communication is another dimension. The role of language is actually fundamental, I think, to the pandemic. If we think about storytelling, about news stories and journalism, how we engage ourselves to stories of grief so that we can be mobilized as human beings in this moment. The use of metaphor is really very striking in the language that has been employed by politicians. The notion that we are at war, we are fighting an enemy. Language is very profound, I think, in this set of circumstances. And then we also have issues of platforms, of social media. This is the first pandemic which is played out on a social media platform. Briefly, in going forward, perhaps the first thing that we'll be thinking about would be vaccines. Vaccines are obviously an enormous scientific challenge, but then there's the question of adoption, the question of the anti-vaxxers. These are fundamentally anthropological issues. Why do people resist the opportunity for potentially life-saving vaccines? That's something we have to come to grips with. And then finally, we have to think about how we're going to write the history of this pandemic. It's in progress and process, but we also have to write about it and to try to capture it in a certain kind of way through oral history and a variety of other sources. And I think in all of this, HERA has an important role to play. It's an advocate for the humanities generally. It provides a basis for cross-European awareness and cooperation. We know that there's the Public Spaces Joint Research Program, which is fundamental to the current activities of HERA. All of these provide the spaces in which we can think through some of these difficult questions.
Thank you, Dan. I mean, in many ways, I mean, the animation, as we've seen, is a perfect vehicle as a sort of conversation starter. And I wonder if Joe or Alan, you could talk a bit about how, with the plans for this, going forward, are there, additional activities that you are planning around the animation itself?
So the two of us are currently working on a sort of wraparound film, which is the making of the animation, which is going to feature interviews by the members of the projects who are featured in the film. So not only will we have the visual references to that research, but we'll have discussions of the research that sit alongside the film. But I do hope, really above all, in terms of its role in the world, that it will be a kind of conversation piece. It will take us into those kinds of issues that Dan has just articulated. So it will be a way of creating conversations with people about the role of the humanities, about our history and our culture, that haven't really reached constituencies which should engage with it, that still have a stake in those things. And part of doing this, part of the public engagement role, I think, is to, work with people like Anne Lynn, who have this kind of creative talent, who can take these ideas and transform them, sort of almost translate them into ways that we as academics might not be able to do, but that will have resonance outside of the academic world. And then I hope you've got plans to take it out there into film festivals and so forth, so that we have other kinds of audiences as well.
Yes, that's true. Joe, like me, I totally understand because you guys have been in this field for a really long time. Sometimes when you're talking about public engagement, it's great. I mean, to work with people from different fields, I suppose. So, I just want to mention that in this project, in the animation production, there are actually animators from all around the world. So I was the director. I did the visual designs, like all the sets and a lot of texture drawings. I made it myself, but I also work with a brilliant, talented animator from France. Also several 3D animators from Taiwan and one from UK. So it's actually a project produced in all around the world. And in the music is really fantastic, I think, as well. I think the music was made by the musician from Italy. And I met all of them in UK, but because of the pandemic, all the people, they have get back to their home with their family. So we were all working remotely, talking on Zoom, like what we do right now. So I think it's not all of the things are really depressing during the pandemic. I have to say, I have seen a lot of optimistic opportunity since the pandemic has happened. So I think there's still hope that we can still work together, maybe even more tighter globally. Yeah, in my opinion. And like Joe mentioned, we are now making a making of. I think I'm gonna interview some of the leaders from the projects in HERA, and Joe is gonna help me with some scripting and the interview, the dialogues, what we're gonna talk about.
Super, thank you. And then it's great to think about new ways of working as well, and how, maybe some positives that have come out of the current situation. Maybe we could conclude with Wojciech. We've talked about this as a new direction for HERA, and the commitment to public engagement and so forth. Well, what's next for the HERA program? And perhaps you could fill us in.
Okay, of course, as the network of founders, we are looking forward to the Horizon Europe with the new possibilities to fund the collaborative research in humanities. But on the other hand, as the network of people devoted to humanities, we are looking to the post-COVID world, where we would like to put the emphasis on the role which the humanities might play in this post-pandemic, post-trauma environment, as mentioned by Dan. We are, of course, also doing further work examining the impact of HERA JRP over the 10-year period. And we strongly believe, and that's our message for the outside world, so to say, that the humanities matter, and the humanities research plays an indispensable role in society's development and well-being by addressing the most fundamental challenges of human history, culture, and identity, and by reflecting on the basis of knowledge and truth, and by promoting the values of intellectual curiosity, innovation, critical thinking, and tolerance. We believe also that interdisciplinarity works, and we believe in collaboration that extends the insights of individual disciplines, and we believe that humanities build bridges. You can see it easily now in this current environment, that the humanities research plays a vital role in building relationship among a wide range of societal stakeholders, academics, citizens, communities, civic organizations, industries, and so on. And we also believe that the Europe needs the humanities. So in a time of fundamental debate about the nature of Europe and the European project, the humanities allow us to understand more comprehensively what Europe is, what it has been in the past, and what its future options may be. Of course, we want, first of all, to fund excellent, innovative, collaborative, humanities-led research across disciplines and borders. We would like to support the full range of humanities disciplines, including those traditional, as well as emerging ones, and those oriented towards investigation of the past, as well as the present, and to support constructive collaboration across various disciplines. But on the other hand, we want to foster best practice in knowledge exchange, public engagement, and impact for European humanities research. And of course, we'd like to advocate the humanities across the academic community and among policymakers, with public and private sectors and to the European public. We are already planning our next program, which this time, together with our sister network for the social sciences, will tackle the problem of cultural and societal transformations being the result of current digital innovations, but also as being influenced by society and culture. And with this program, which will be officially announced in the beginning of the 2021, we would like to make a great step beyond the current horizon into the future of the European research funding and future of European humanities.
Great. Thank you, Wojciech. I'd like to wrap up really by thanking Rose and Marina at the Irish Research Council for their support in their technical support in getting this off the ground. Thanks to the Being Human Festival for showcasing the launch of this brilliant animation. I'd like to thank our panelists, Annelyn Chow, Daniel Carey, Joe Sofair, and Wojciech Sowa for their insights and thoughts on the animation and broader issues. And I'd like to thank you for watching, and I really hope that you do share this animation widely, and that you get conversations started around the value of the humanities in the current situation, and yeah, you in turn work as advocates for the work we do. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, Tony.